I'm Marilee Eerkes, and this is my story. Well, I grew up in a family with 3 older brothers, much older. So I was somewhat the princess, the only girl, great mom and dad. We had to move because of my dad's job quite often, and I was pretty shy, so it was hard for me to move to a new school and meet new friends. In my family, my father and mother instilled in us that we were all going to college. Very important. My dad hadn't gone to college, and by golly, his kids were going to go to college. For my brothers, they talked a lot about being doctors and engineers and scientists and lawyers and businessmen. But my mother would always say to me, "Oh, you'd make a great nurse. You would make a great teacher." I finally confronted her and said, "Why didn't you think I could become a doctor or a lawyer?" And she said, "Oh, you could have done all of those things." I never thought you couldn't. It was just that you seemed comfortable with kids and you liked to care for things. And so it just seemed part of your nature. But I didn't choose to be a teacher until much later, partly because I thought I wasn't going to do what my mother thought I should do. When I moved to Kennewick, I met Craig. We were in high school and became high school, I guess you would say, sweethearts. We dated throughout high school. And after 2 years of college, Craig and I made this foolish decision that we were grown up enough to go and get married. So we got married at the end of our sophomore year. And I moved to Tacoma and we went to school. Actually, he went to school. I worked at UPS and helped put him through school. He worked on the sides too. And when we finished college, or he finished college, we moved to Spokane for a while. Then we had the opportunity to move back to the Tri-Cities for 1 year so that we could make enough money to go back to school. We never went back. We stayed here. And while I was here, I realized I needed to get my act together and finally finish my degree. So I went to school, finished up my degree, and became a teacher. When we moved back to the Tri-Cities, we had Chris first. 2 years later, I had Laura. Yeah, great kids. They grew up in a fun neighborhood where in those days kids would get on their bikes and go all over and explore. They had such freedom to just be kids, have fun. When Laura was a sophomore, Chris went to Spokane to go to school. The two of them were best buds. So when he left, it was really hard on her. She journaled a lot. Laura loved to write. And so she journaled a lot during that time because she missed him. And there were a lot of long distance phone calls. One weekend, she wanted to go to visit Chris, stay with Chris, see friends, and come back. It was a Friday, going to come back Saturday. And they were going to follow each other. She had done it before, so I wasn't really too concerned. But she got hung up with a friend. She was often late. We were just visiting and kind of waiting for her and getting a little concerned, thinking, okay, she should be here by now. And a call came. It was the hospital. She had a car accident outside of Connell. One car accident, no other car involved. Not quite sure what happened. They had brought her to Lourdes Hospital. So Chris and I jumped in the car and headed over. She was, in ICU, I suppose you would say, critical care, and could only see her for a moment. It was all up in the air. She was unconscious. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And the next morning, we found out she had broken her brainstem. So there was no, we couldn't save her. Couldn't save her. She'd been thrown out of the car. And she only had scratches on her knuckles and on her knees. And then her head was partially bandaged. She was perfect. She looked like she was sleeping. And we just sat there. And said goodbye. It was hard. I don't think back on it too often. I've never felt that kind of pain. I've never felt that kind of pain. We were pretty lost as a family. Fortunately, we have extended family that came immediately. We were quickly surrounded by a network of people that just held us up. You know, looking back, if you don't have that, I don't know how you survive a loss like that. I just don't know how you survive. So we were really fortunate, really fortunate. We had some great friends, some community people that just rallied. Families have tragedies all the time, but at that moment, you think you're the only one that's ever had this happen to them. And there was something so unfair about it. Just because if you knew Laura, it just seemed impossible. It just was really unfair. We discovered people that were really good friends that we didn't realize how good they were until that time. They were the folks that came and checked. They were the folks that didn't say, you know, how you doing? What can I do to help? Because I didn't know what they could do to help. None of us did. They were the people that came in and said, I'm bringing you dinner. And I would say, no, it's not necessary. No, I'm bringing you dinner. They were the folks that showed up and sat and just, if you needed to cry, you cried. They accepted all of us where we were. We didn't grieve with a lot of grace back then. We went through all the stages, but all different times. Tried counseling, grief counseling with other parents that lost children, and they had either miscarried or lost a child at a very young age. And I remember at the time thinking, you don't get it. You didn't really know your child. I knew mine. My grief is worse than yours. And it took me months later to realize their grief was like mine, because they had the same hopes and dreams for their child. But it took me a while to get there because I was pretty wrapped up in my own grief. What got me through was a really good counselor that saw me one-on-one. I just couldn't function without having some help. I needed help. Grief is hard. It's hard work. And you have to give it time. And when someone says time will heal, don't expect time to heal. Time just changes the grief. Laura's been gone a lot of years. And we still tear up. We still look at pictures and we still think about her all the time. I've got 3 granddaughters now, and each one of them reminds me of her in a different way. Don't rush it. Don't expect it to be over in a minute. And for some of us, it takes a long time. And don't expect it to just go away. It doesn't. It just doesn't go away. You just find ways that make it better. Laura used to have a saying when we would do a family event, or heck, we'd go take a walk. She would say, from the time she was little until the time she passed, she would say, "Mom, we just made a memory." And I think of that often when I think of her and the memories we shared. And I hope when other people are grieving, they find the time where they can look at the good memories. Because we all make those memories. And I think you rely on those so that you don't think about the death as much and the loss as much. It's still there, but you think of the memories. It's okay to throw a fit. It's okay to yell. It's okay to scream. Forgive yourself, because you're going to say some things or do some things you wish you didn't. You're going to yell at people and say things that is really out of character. It's okay, forgive yourself. And for those that want to give somebody help with the grieving process, it's really hard, because when you have a friend or someone you know that's lost someone, to find the right words. If you can't find the right words, just say, "I'm so sorry." It's not a time to give them any lessons. If you want to help, help. Don't say, "What can I do for you?" Because chances are the person that's grieving doesn't know. They have no clue what to do. And they'll say, "I'm fine." So don't wait for that. If you really want to help, bring a meal. I don't know, clean their house. I don't know, go and act. And that's really hard for people to do, because you have to be prepared for the ugly grief that you're going to find on the other side. When you lose a child, I think especially with a child, parents and families don't want that child's name to be forgotten. They want you to remember, because that person's so important to them. And one of the most valuable things is if you have a memory of doing something special with that person, or that person did something special for you, share that with the family. If you can't do it one-on-one, write it down, send it to them. That means so much. And to this day, when I hear, especially Laura's friends, say something about Laura, "I remember this," it always brightens our day, because you realize who she's touched, and you realize they haven't forgotten her. She's important to them too. And so I really encourage people that have lost, or working with somebody that's lost somebody, to talk about the memories they share with them. Don't be afraid. Be generous. Be willing to listen.